Hi, this is another Wesson inspired style painting that I'm going to do. This is a scene from a Norfolk beach, and I'm going to be working from my black and white sketch. The first thing I'm going to do in this painting is draw a horizon line. It's 2/3 up the page, and this really just breaks that thing that artists get sometimes where they can't draw on a piece of paper in case they spoil it. This really is just a line to break that cycle, and I probably won't be looking at this much, but it is nice to get a nice straight line, particularly if you're using a seascape. Now I'm going to be drawing directly with ink. There's no pencil lines here at all, and the pen I'm using is a piece of matchstick stuck into a bamboo holder. The beach that we're looking at here is one in Norfolk. It's slightly up from, I want to say Great Yarmouth, and I'm hoping that's correct. Geography is a bit rubbish, and I drew this sketch about 10 years ago. Never did anything with it, and then suddenly decided, yes, I'm going to do another Western inspired painting from it. So all the colours that I use in this painting are purely imaginary, and let's just sort of see how we go. So I've already started to draw some of this in. I've got the first cottage, and I'm going to start drawing in the sort of the breakwater boards, or goinies I think they're called. I'm going to start putting them in now, a series of steps as they go down the beach, and some sort of lines or suggestions of the sort of the big thick heavy sort of poles that hold them into the beach. This painting is going to be painted very simply, with a big brush, and like I say, colours made up from my imagination, but sort of still staying truthful to the landscape. I've seen an image like this online that Wesson himself painted, and perhaps it's the same beach, who knows. I do find that a lot of beaches and seascapes look the same, but let's imagine that he actually went to this same spot and drew this picture. Now I'm just measuring across from the halfway up the roof of the first cottage. Now the second one I'm doing, it could be a shed, I don't know, it could be a small house, I can't remember, like I said, it was 10 years ago, but I'm going to put in some indication of something there, and then a bigger sort of a building next to that with a fence of green, a hedge, I guess, not a fence of green, a hedge that's going to separate the tide, the beach from the buildings. Adding some planks of wood to the sort of big fenced off area around the main cottage, and this is the sort of the area of the painting that I want the viewer to be looking at. So we'll use some tone to get and some sort of suggestion of pointing to get people to look there. There's not a huge amount of drawing in this image, it's just a series of very random ink lines, and I'm just going to draw out the sort of the background now, the background sort of piece of land that goes out around some sort of bay or piece of sand there. So that's that drawn in, and a couple of figures just to add a little bit of interest. I've started to draw figures in ink on these drawings. I used to draw them and fill them in with paint, but I think they work better if there's just ink. And I just start off with a sort of a small dot, a carrot shape, and then I add legs to the bottom of the carrot shape, and that seems to work quite well, although I think these people would probably be giants, which makes a change to the way I used to draw them, and they used to look somehow just didn't look believable. So I'm just putting down now the legs of this person, a man and a wife, walking up the beach. They're arms sort of out from their body as they swing them up and down. And that's sort of the impression I want to give. And then very quick sort of swipe to make a shadow that they will be casting up the beach. Like I say, not much drawing's gone on here, just some sort of outlines really, and probably the way Edward Wesson would have worked himself, I would imagine. So the next step is very much to get some paint onto this picture. I'm going to be using three main colours: permanent rose, quinacridone gold and cobalt blue. Three of my sort of mainstay colours. We're going to put in a big sort of loose sky starting on the right and pulling across to sort of a warmer area over the cottages to give the eye some interest. We have a big expanse of beach, but we've used some line work to point the viewer's eye to where we want them to go around the picture. And we'll think about the horizon and what we do with the sea, so that will take shape towards the end of the painting. So using my big squirrel mop brush now, I'm just dropping in a lot of cobalt blue to the top right hand side of this picture, making some tops of cloud shapes and upside down views, basically flooding the paper with cobalt blue. Then using a brush filled with clear water just to pull that paint down and across into the sea. You see the colours draining down already. A little bit of permanent rose on the top left hand side, and just bringing that down over the cottages as they'll be darker anyway. I'm now going to very quickly put in the sea. I hope you saw that, a single stroke along the horizon line. I'll probably add another stroke underneath to indicate the sort of the waves crashing up and down the beach there. And then very simply some quinacridone gold and Windsor yellow to push the beach in now. The beach is going to be sort of quite a big important piece of this painting, and I'm going to let some of the sand colour leak into the sea just to create a puddle. You get puddles of water and a little white line to indicate some waves, but a nice little puddle of water there just to help make the sea seem wet. I find that sort of helps sometimes, and just filling in the rest of the beach there with some yellow, so the slightly warmer yellow with some quinacridone gold and permanent rose near the tide, and some sort of just permanent yellow in the sand, and one stroke there for the beach in the background, going over some bushes which I'll paint in later, so I'm not too worried about that. Gonna add a few strokes of permanent rose now to indicate people who may have walked up the beach, some sort of lines, some suggestions that there's some movement there on the tide. These sort of just little lines, these are little marks that probably wouldn't have been there, but I find they just help the eye, move the eye into the picture. Very swift marks as well, not spending too much time on them or worrying where they are in the painting themselves. We're going to be putting a tree in, but I think we need to let this dry, otherwise the paint will just sort of splurge across the paper. So we'll let this dry for a few minutes. So the painting's dry now, and I can go in and put some background trees in over the tops of the cottage roofs, which will help to give them some sort of standing in the painting. We'll do the background of the headland at the back there. We'll put some colour on that, and then just gently work our way around bits and pieces. So the goinies, we'll put them in as well in a few minutes, and that's the next step for this painting really. Now I've switched to a slightly smaller brush now. I'm going to put these trees, this sort of massive trees that were in my sketch. I'm going to start by using some cobalt blue paint. It's fairly milky in consistency. I'm just putting in some distant trees now, and then I'm going to hit that with some green that will bleed together and sort of give us some foreground trees and make the whole thing kind of feel like trees. I'm going to push that down into the some little bushes there, which we'll put in later. I'm going to move down to this. There's a little sort of a big lump of grass or banking there just behind that greeny, so I'm just going to put that in. Same green, just added a little bit of cobalt blue to change the colour a bit, and now with a little bit of cobalt blue and a bit of permanent rose, I'm going to start putting in that far headland there with a sort of a single stroke, and you'll see that the green bank of grass will leak into that and create some sort of green to the blue, make it sort of a believable piece of headland. So that's that, very simply painted, just a couple of strokes, no fussing with it, keeping the colours nice and clear and using the watercolour transparency to help there. So that was very simply done. There's no, like I say, no fussing. Don't fuss with your painting. It just let the watercolour do the work. There's plenty for you to think about, but let the watercolour do the work. I'm going to start filling in there was a fence in front of the cottage that I wanted to draw, and I'm doing strokes of fencing. I'm sort of pulling it along and indicating that this is a continuous thing, but it's sort of sand has banked up, so there's no regular edge along the bottom, and taking that out to sea along the sort of breakwater, and yeah, like I say, out to sea. Again, all very simply done. I'm not fussing with this, just a simple brush stroke in the direction of the boards that would have been made. Doing some roof now, just filling the roof in. So sometimes I have to think, is this the right colour to use here? But this is sort of an important part of the picture, so I'm just going to add some interesting tones in places and shadows to make it look like it's something, but it's nothing really. It's just a colour, just a load of blits and blobs of paint, if I'm honest. But as you stand back, you can see it, and I think that's the important thing. To stand back from your painting and have a look to see what you actually have got. I'm going to put in a green hedge now in front of those two buildings. Again, just letting the paint merge, but leaving an untidy bottom to the edge so that it looks like there could be sand and other bits and pieces going on there, and a few little bushes on the end there as well. We're going to get round to doing the beach itself next, so I'm going to separate the beach out by putting in some sort of strokes of darker sand that are coming down. You can see the direction I'm pulling the brush. That's to indicate the sort of a slight slope that was there. I'm using dry brush as well, a bit of sparkle into the sand, not a big blob of colour. It looks like a zebra crossing, but just sort of a hint of colour, a bit of permanent rose on the edge of that sand now, a bit too dark, so I've added a bit more yellow into that just to make the colour stronger at the foreground, and then a few lines, and these are the direction lines that I'm talking about that I put in occasionally, so some direction lines here to help the viewer see where I want you to look. Those lines, you can't help but look up at them, and it takes you to the people that I've put in the painting. A bit more dry brush across the front there, just a bit of shadow at the front of the painting, because that always seems to help a painting if there's a bit of shadow at the front. Another indication of something going on, people walking up and down the beach. And now just round the breakwater, making that sand a little bit darker. You do find this, that some of the sand is darker. It's where the wet, it's reflection really, and I'm using again pure water just in that colour, just to bring it down and make that look wet beach look wetter than it probably actually is, and that aids that illusion. Again, some more dry brush marks just to indicate that something's going on there, something's moving. And I do this quite a bit. I just add some random marks, and what this has done is it's pushed back the further beach. It looks further away than the beach in front of us. It's the busyness has helped us to move it into the foreground. Bit of colour on the roof of the cottage now. Colour at the top, plain water at the bottom, just so that it doesn't compete with the hedge or the fence that's been put in there, and some colour on the wall of the other cottage, leaving some bits white as well. Bit of reflection and bit of sparkle in the painting. And we're kind of almost getting there now, I think, with this. There's not a huge amount left to do. It's a very simple painting. Like I say, I've made it up from my sketch, so these colours may or may not have been there on the day, but certainly they seem to make sense when you look at the tones of this painting. And we will come back in a second once this has dried and do some more work into this to finally bring those colours out. I just wanted to put some kind of indication of boat masts along the beach, and this is where you do have to have a bit of patience. I've done it too soon really, and the picture isn't dry, so the bush has now got a nice dark mark across it, but I'm not going to fuss or worry about that. As soon as you make a mistake, move away. Don't try and fix it, because at this stage, with all that paint that's wet, you're just going to either end up with a cauliflower or creating a new sort of problem for yourself. And we can correct that, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that in a minute. I'll make the goinies darker to hide that mistake. So here we go now, final stage of the painting, and I'm going to use some dark colour now to hide that mistake of the posts by darkening that goiny down again that goes into the breakwater, and also using that to separate out the fence from the other bits and pieces happening there, re-establishing the masts of whatever boats are hidden behind this piece of goiny that we can't get to, and trying not to make the bottoms too flat. Leave them jaggedy, because they're sort of indicating the lie of the land as well, which is good. Adding in lots of little dots and dashes and marks there in the cottages to help them contrast against one another with the tone. I think I might add some more colour to the bushes. There's some bushes here that should come forward away from the kind of more distant blobs of trees at the top of the cottages, so mixing some paint now to do that. And we're really almost there, if I'm honest. Here we go, there's those, just adding a bit of colour onto those bushes to bring them forward. That's it, just a little bit, just to bring something forward from the background trees. Adding a little bit of colour into the hedge that separates the beach from the houses there, but leaving little glimpses of the original colour behind, just to add to the tonal effect and to give the painting a bit of depth. Say it's not too much to do now, but I do want to resolve the horizon and the sea. It all seems to be merging together at the moment, and I think I'm going to change that by adding a sort of this is a cobalt blue line across the horizon, and it looks quite stark, but I'm going to soften that in with some plain water, just to stop it from looking like sticking out really. And there you go, so that's now given us horizon to look towards, and there you go, that's the painting finished in Edward Wesson's style.